rooftop farming. Basically, the science behind it, the engineering, and how it'd be both beneficial in the sense where it's beneficial to the entire planet, and also in the sense of the Ego Tech Park in Bridgeport. Alright, so this is a picture of ancient Babylon because the science itself is ancient, essentially. So back in the day, they saw values of having your farms right there on top of your buildings, just for general closeness. You can produce food and have it be right there. It also shows that it is something that's come a far way since then. Structural support. So there's many things that go into factoring in, what you need to build a rooftop farm essentially, and the structure is one of them. You do have to know whether or not the building itself can support the weight of the entire farm. There's two different kinds of designs. There's a closed system design, which of course you do have, you can take out a lot of the unknown variables such as nature themselves. I'll go into more detail as to what can affect, an open environment, but a closed takes away that entire element. Usually they yield a little bit more than an open system. This is an example of an open system. There's a lot of benefits to having this as well, though the yield's a little bit smaller, like what Jared was talking about in his project. The fact that you have it open, not only do people get to see it, so it's aesthetically pleasing, but you have the fact that it works as a water medium, so it can collect stormwater. Engineered soil. This engineered soil particularly is called roofalite. It's been made so that it's a lot lighter than just normal soil. So it's got smaller pores, but a lot more of them. So it can also take in a lot more water. That's why they need that, just so that it wouldn't be so heavy on the roof. Design crop choice. It also goes into how you're going to model the rooftop farm itself, depending on what you're going to grow. Clearly, if you want to grow something that's, needs optimal conditions year round, you need a closed system. But other things, if you're growing potatoes, for example, you could have an open system. Another thing that some people have incorporated is whether or not they want to put livestock up on the roof. Of course, you can't have like cows or pigs or anything like that, because that's too extreme. But people have done, larger chicken coops and beehives, which is, something that's another option that I didn't even think of when I didn't start this project. Yeah, those are hives.
Nice.
So the overall problem for this is why it's important is because our current population for the world right now is at roughly 7 million, and by 2050 we expect it to jump another 2 million. It's blowing up in areas, as you can see, that are already struggling to feed their populations. So the real question is, what are we going to do to feed that extra 2 million people? 15% of our food is already grown in cities, which is actually larger than I actually even thought it would have been. But still, it's still a little low, and we would like to shoot that up. So this picture is an example of what it'd be if we started adding, green roofs and rooftop farms to roofs in almost, all the buildings in cities. So from the food that you have can travel on average usually 1,500 miles from the farm to the plate. This is an extreme waste of, fossil fuels. So think of how much could be saved if the company is running hundreds of trucks to move food. How much could be saved if the food was just produced right there, right above the building itself. Year-round growth. So this is one of the benefits of a closed system. Weather no longer plays an effect. So if you wanted to grow something that needs optimal conditions year-round in a closed system, you could essentially do that because you won't have to deal with winter or extreme weather for any other kind of thing like that. Pest avoidance. Once again, closed system can help with this. Even sometimes an open system can affect this as well. But locusts or any other bugs that will come from either below the ground or above ground, you can basically avoid that whole problem, and disease as well. You completely avoid toxic soils because of the fact that, in cities particularly, we have all that storm water that will basically leach toxic chemicals into the soil and into the water. Well, for a system like this, you won't have anything like that because the only factors will be what's coming naturally from our environment. You pick the soils themselves and everything like that. One of the huge things that's factoring into why people are adding them is the building energy cost. So for all the buildings that have been using rooftop farms and green roofs for the most part, they've been seeing much lower energy costs. So you'll save on heating and in cooling the building. problem cost. So basically, the only thing that's holding people back from actually implementing these systems is it's the cost, which isn't all that expensive, but it's kind of the idea if it isn't broke, why fix it? So if we can get people to change their idea and show them that these systems are really effective, then maybe we can get them to actually switch over and use this technology. So this is an example of the ideal system, which I actually found a few pictures of real ones, but they didn't look as nice as strong. There are like Whole Foods out there that have done their entire roof to be a closed system, only because they wanted to produce the crops year round. So, but okay. As for new designs, what we will be seeing is they plan on doing a stack system so that you can grow basically crops throughout an entire building's height. There's a bunch of designs. Some of them use unnatural light, and some of them use natural light. For like in that system, it spirals around the building so they can collect it at all angles. Space station designs, they've already started doing this. NASA did, or at least they're planting stuff out in space, which is pretty amazing. If we can start growing food out in space stations to be sent back. I don't know what the cost of a project like that is, but hopefully we can figure out to be cheaper. And then for the way far future, for any of you who saw Interstellar, there is something along the lines of if Earth really did come to a point where it's no longer hospitable, which would be crazy to think, but it is completely possible. What would we do? And essentially, if we start figuring out this technology and developing it as far as it can go, hopefully it could be used for potentially leading